Chair, I want to speak a little bit about the proposed provisions about restricting union access, because I think my colleague Darian Fenton made some very good contributions on that point. Really, the proposal in the bill to make access to workplaces conditional on the consent of the employer is very problematic. It's an ideological and deliberate attack on the democratic right of wage and salary earners to join unions and resolve issues that arise in the workplace. And it's pretty ironic to look at the explanatory note to the bill. It says this change is intended to increase levels of choice and fairness to employers. Well, of course, that comes at a cost, and the cost is to employees. They're the ones who lose out in terms of their freedom of choice and their access to fairness in the workplace. And the worst thing, sir, about this change, and I hope the Minister and the Chair might take a call on this, be good to hear from a representative of the government on why this change is thought to be necessary. And I know the Minister will want to tell the House about why this aspect of government policy has been put in place, because the regulatory impact statement, as well as Kate Wilkinson's own policy paper dated 15 May last year, says this: there does not appear to be widespread evidence of union representatives exercising their current rights to enter workplaces in an inappropriate way, resulting in disruption for business operations or adversely impacting on the employment relationship between employer and union members. It's just the point made by Lynn Pillay right now. There's no evidence of any need for this change, no evidence of abuse, no even anecdotal widespread stories around about unions abusing the current right of access to workplaces. So why is this change being mooted? And I do hope we can hear from the Minister, because if we don't, then we just have to conclude that it is an ideological change, an ideological attack on unions, and that the National Party might think that that'll play well electorally, but we'll see, because New Zealanders are getting sick of these attacks on ordinary wage and salary earners. We've seen it already in a number of pieces of legislation, and you can't, one can't expect to see the erosion of these sort of terms and conditions time and time again with no evidence of the need for it. We hear pious speeches in this House all the time about how we should only ever legislate if there's a clear need. That's why we brought in the regulatory impact statement process. You should always be very clear, members opposite, about why you're legislating. And it is not clear why this provision is needed. There's just no evidence anywhere about abuse. And sir, even Business New Zealand said this isn't a high priority for it. It doesn't receive many complaints from employers about union access. Now, the Prime Minister tried to sell this policy to the National Party conference as one of the steps to a, quote, more productive economy and increased employment, end quote. Yet even he, in October, told the Council of Trade Unions that this was not a, quote, driving priority, end quote. So why on earth is the Parliament here in urgency ramming through a piece of legislation to restrict the rights of the representatives of wage and salary earners, ordinary Kiwis, the rights that they have to ensure that their terms and conditions are being met by their employers, by a meaningful inspection going on in the workplace, by the right to be visited and to be comforted by their union officials without being impeded by employers? Why is this being done when it's very clear from the evidence that there's just no need for the change? Now, sir, the access provisions in the current legislation were very carefully thought through. They're there because it's necessary to ensure that union officials can check whether health and safety, employment standards and what have you are being honoured in the workplace. And of course, you're going to run into difficulties if you've got an employer that isn't honouring those standards. Those are the employers that are going to take advantage of the provisions that the Parliament will be enacting in urgency today, because it's only the dodgy employers that are going to want to keep representatives of unions out. That's plain, because there is no evidence of abuse of these provisions at the moment. The access provisions at the moment enable wage and salary earners to choose to be represented by knowledgeable people in grievance situations. Access, Mr Chairman.
I'd call